You know, 2025 wasn't the greatest year for Hollywood, but when it delivers its high marks, when it delivers the goods, does it ever? And now that we close the portal to hell, damning all of the 10 worst movies of 2025 for all of eternity, it's time for us to climb up Jacob's ladder as we ascend to filmmaking heaven. As we talk about the best films of 2025, 10 films surrounded in a veil of heaven's light, gracing their presence. Much like the top 10 worst movies of 2025, I haven't seen every single movie that came out this year. There are some certain movies that I haven't seen personally that could be considered a worthy contender, and other movies that people did say are one of the best movies of the year that when I watched it, I'm like, there are certainly better movies than this. However, of the films that I did see, these 10 films are the ones that represent the apex of what Hollywood has to offer, from the independent to the mainstream. But enough of the exposition, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for you guys to strap yourself in, for we are going on a wild ride to reveal the best movies of 2025. Of the films that he has made throughout his whole career, this has to be one of the most unique films that Richard Linklater has ever directed. Ultimately, this film is an enthralling yet sympathetic character study about a man who is an eccentric, cynical, yet fascinating songwriter who, over the course of this film, comes to terms with how irrelevant that he is becoming since his separation from his songwriting partner, being Richard Rodgers, how annoying and nosy he can be, how his alcoholism has taken a toll on his relationships, and how his sexuality prevents him from being with the woman he really cares about. One of the most fascinating elements about Blue Moon is the fact that it takes place primarily in one area, almost as if you were watching a cinematic play being taken place on the big screen. The set design captures the 1943 aesthetic pristinely, and Linklater does a terrific job with his actors, making them deliver sharp, acerbic, yet hilarious dialogue. If there is one major reason to go see this movie, it would have to be the mind-blowing performance of Ethan Hawke as Lorenz Hart. Definitely one not to be missed, especially if you are into musicals. Brought to you by the director of Oldboy, Park Chan-wook delivers on a very dark, comedic satire about one's desperation for a job and rising to the occasion ahead of your competitors. No Other Choice is a terrific movie that holds your hand every step of the way and leaves you invested as to what can happen next. It plops you into the story about a man who is trying to acquire a job for his family by any means necessary, eliminating the top applicants for the job that he wants so badly at a paper company, and hoping he can get away with it. The acting is terrific, the writing is tight, the editing, especially when the film transitions between scenes, is so creative and precise. And the movie does a terrific job at articulating and executing its social commentary effectively and intelligently. Unlike a certain film that is probably going to win Best Picture at the Oscars, but I digress. I know all the women out there are probably going to agree with me on this, but being a mom is very hard work. However, in Mary Bronstein's sophomoric feature, she dares to ask the question of, what if I make a movie about a mom who doesn't have her crap together, trying to resolve stressful and infuriating situations around her while needing to overcome her own personal trauma? And let me tell you something, she handles that in spades with If I Had Legs, I Kick You. It's a comedic yet anxiety-inducing look inside of a mother's life, spiraling out of control, while acknowledging how much of a screw-up she actually is, how inconsistent she is trying to resolve her issues, and being clingy and trying to drag her own personal therapist and colleague, being played by Conan O'Brien, on her own personal burden. The screenplay has wit, it is unpredictable, but it's Rose Byrne's transformative acting that is the absolute standout of the entire flick. I like me some William Shakespeare, whether it be faithful, direct, or loose adaptations. But Hamnet is something far more different than what we are accustomed to. Based on the book of the same name, this was such a heart-wrenching, sublime movie about this relationship between two people who have loved each other so dearly with different backgrounds, different upbringings, as they try to reconcile together after the death of their only son during the bubonic plague. Every single actor in this movie felt so real. Paul Mescal's performance as William Shakespeare is so perfect, including that point where he recites the famous Hamlet soliloquy. And Jessie Buckley's performance as the grieving and gentle Agnes, or historically speaking, Anne Hathaway, is something that is worthy of every award possible. Not to mention that even the child actors deserve their kudos as well. Chloe Zhao's morose yet beautiful direction captures the aesthetic of the 16th century English countryside and time period, and the final climatic onstage rendition of Hamlet is one of the most speechless, glorious depictions of a historically accurate stage play that I have seen in ages. This is a spectacular drama featuring one of the greatest playwrights of our time that, if you have a mom and a dad, or if you have a mom or a dad, go and hug him. Trust me, it's best to go see this movie with your family. You can thank me later. Yeah, you thought that this movie was going to be compiled of nothing more than independent award-nominated features? Well, buckle your seatbelts, guys, because this is where the exhilaration begins. Joseph Kosinski may have turned some heads with his electrifying legacy sequel, Top Gun: Maverick, but there was this lingering speculation before F1 was ever released that maybe Maverick was just a fluke. But like a former Super Bowl winning quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens, Joseph Kosinski, he still got it. The story, of course, is a bit derivative from what we have seen before, centering on an old, wisecracking veteran at odds with the rookie who's all about fame and glory. But it's the traditional, confident execution about the newer versus older generation formula that makes F1 stand head and neck above the rank and file. Everything about Joseph Kosinski's direction feels old-fashioned in a good sense, fitting about as well as it did for Maverick. The actors from Brad Pitt, Javier Bardem, Kerry Condon, and Damson Idris are outstanding with the material that they are given. The race sequences are gripping and they take your breath away, with the arresting cinematography showcasing the intensity of Formula One racing. F1 is the perfect example of, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And hey, who knows what else that Kosinski have up his sleeve next. Aside from number one on this list, this section is going to be pretty long, so brace yourselves. Everyone who has lived past the mid-2000s has a clear idea of what the Iraq War was. It's a topic that is still debated even to this very day. Alex Garland and former Navy SEAL Ray Mendoza tell a story based on Mendoza's experiences as a Navy SEAL in the Iraq War, and puts us into the perspective of a platoon of Navy SEALs who get compromised and ambushed while they're trying to provide overwatch for a military operation in Iraq. This is one of the most realistic war movies that I have ever seen in my life. You even look up interviews of former Navy SEALs and former veterans, and they would watch this movie and they would go, yep, the director did their homework. From the way the soldiers would interact with each other and form camaraderie and even handle evacuations, to the way that gunfights are portrayed on screen is so authentic, visceral, and brutal. And it's not done in a Hollywoodized way, but in a fashion to where you feel like you're in the middle of a skirmish. Heck, there are so many instances where the film catches you off guard, such as a grenade popping into a sniper's hole and blowing everything up, or a UED exploding at the wrong time because, hey, that's how war works. It's unforgiving, it's unpredictable, and straight up horrifying. The sound design is so ingenious and realistic that I am shocked that it's not even being nominated for Best Sound Design. And in a film headlining well-known actors such as Will Poulter or Joseph Quinn, none of them are being portrayed as generic military archetypes that you would see in Hollywoodized war films. Each one of them feels like a real soldier, whether it's exchanging information, screaming from a horrific and mortifying injury, screwing up when trying to inject morphine on somebody during the conflict, or a captain overwhelmed with trauma and stress as he's looking at his men dying right in front of him, and he has no idea what to do. This movie is a sensational war film that not only establishes the amount of sacrifices that men have to serve our country, but you can easily consider it as a horror movie in and of itself. And surprisingly, it wasn't even the best horror movie of this year. On one mysterious night at 2:17 a.m., in the quaint town of Maybrook, Pennsylvania, 17 children from Miss Gandy's class woke up, got out of bed, walked downstairs, opened the front door, and walked into the darkness, and they never came back. That premise of this movie alone feels like an extremely atmospheric and well-written campfire story or an online creepypasta come to life. And somehow, Zach Cregger has made it come to fruition in the soon-to-be horror classic, Weapons. Giving away anything else of what happens in this intense, mystifying horror movie would be doing it a major disservice, because the screenplay, all told in 6 chapters, is a thrilling, captivating nightmare that fills your soul with dread, and is enriched with symbolic and thematic imagery about things outside of our control, weaponizing the community against each other. The horror element surrounding this film is beyond chilling, and the jump scares, while you do see some of them coming, still manages to land a shocking blow. The cinematography is gorgeous and even sinister at times. The acting is phenomenal, especially Amy Madigan, who plays one of the most sadistic villains in horror movie memory. That totally didn't keep me up at night, and has one of the most comedic, elating, and satisfying endings that I can recall. Weapons is a cinematic heat-seeking missile, and quite frankly, I can't wait to see what he has for Resident Evil. As someone who hasn't seen everything from one of the most adorned, visually gifted, and downright legendary auteurs in filmmaking, I cannot express how much Guillermo del Toro continues to impress me with each passing project. First, the voluptuous reinterpretation of the Beauty and the Beast fairy tale, The Shape of Water. Then it was a stop-motion animated masterpiece that was Pinocchio, one of the best animated movies of the past 8 years, and to this very day, no other animated film in the 2010s can even compare to its pedigree. His professional, personal, and superb knack for fantasy and sci-fi is second to none. Whether it's indefatigably crafting a near one-for-one adaptation of a fairy tale or retelling folklore in a different approach. Del Toro's Frankenstein, while deviating certain materials from the original source, still manages to tell an immaculate story about a hubristic scientist trying to achieve the impossible while coming face to face with a monster that he has brought to existence. Del Toro's attention to detail, from the practical effects of the monster to the costume and the production design of a gothic 19th century Europe. The performances from Oscar Isaac as Victor Frankenstein and Jacob Elordi as the monster itself are completely unmatched, and the cinematography is about as majestic as the story it's telling. With such respect to Mary Shelley's graphic novel, Del Toro's adaptation is more alive than ever. If Good Time, Uncut Gems, and Marty Supreme taught us anything, is that Josh Safdie, one half of the Safdie brothers, really knows how to make a heart-stopping, adrenaline-spiking thriller/drama that in the end kind of makes you want to root for such an unlikable bastard. While Benny Safdie was off directing a film that was about one of the pioneering fighters of the UFC, Josh Safdie told to his brother, "You know what? I can do you one better. I'm gonna make a movie about a magnanimously talented table tennis player who cons, cheats, lies, and fights his way to the top to make a name for himself." And as you can tell, Josh's film was the best of the two. Loosely based on the life of an athlete, Marty Reisman, Josh Safdie's strengths for this film is present and accounted for. From the terrific, charismatic, slimy, and enriching acting, especially from the likes of Kevin O'Leary and Tyler the Creator, the soundtrack with its use of old school synthwave tracks and synthesized music feels like a blissful massage. The script work is effortless, and it transforms our main character from a cocky opportunist into a tennis player who is seeking redemption from all of the decisions he made. And after all of the work he has done, from Dune to Wonka and now Marty Supreme, I think it's about time that Timothée Chalamet, after having the best performance of his entire career, to hoist the Oscar he rightfully deserves high into the air come springtime. Keep an eye out for the Safdie brothers, because they have been proving themselves time and time again that they are one of the most underrated filmmakers working in Hollywood today. It's just unfortunate that there was one more movie that took the #1 spot from Marty Supreme, and that is... Of all the films that I have seen from beginning to end, from January all the way to the end of December, there hasn't been a single film that has stuck with me emotionally, narratively, and thematically than Francis Lawrence's grueling, magnificent, one-for-the-ages adaptation of Stephen King's The Long Walk. I mean, from somebody who was entirely opposed to the Hunger Games movies, I figured it would be a bog-standard Hunger Games-esque storyline with characters that I couldn't give a crap less about, set in a dystopian Maine. But man, after watching this movie, I have never felt more happier to be wrong in my life. The Long Walk is a macabre, breathtaking, no-holds-barred dystopian drama that will leave you terrorized, traumatized, and stunned into complete silence, as if your soul was sucked directly out of your body. It's a saddening, emotional, and powerful punch to the gut that nails its themes of friendship, brotherhood, pain, and sacrifice, and exceptionally takes advantage of the book's allegory of young, sophisticated blue-collar boys being sent to die for a cause that could patriotically and economically reshape America for the better, all the while they're being watched by the masses through their television screens. More precisely, it's an allegory of the Vietnam War. And this movie just manages to be one of the best Vietnam War movies that are out there, in a movie that is not even about or even takes place in the Vietnam War. The world building from the outset establishes exactly how terrifying and bleak. This hellscape of a stratocratic, totalitarian regime, all ruled by a nefarious major is. The film's approach to violence is purposeful and not exploitive. It's so suspenseful that in any instant in which a participant is receiving their first warning or second warning, it makes you sweat bullets as you're watching it. But the main element that holds this film together the most are the characters. Cooper Hoffman and David Johnson's chemistry and characterization is brilliant across the board, and even the supporting characters have a robust level of depth that make them so much more than just the standard Stephen King cliches. And every time that these characters meet their fate or get killed, it hits, and it hits hard. To the point where, no joke, I almost cried. Okay, I teared up like a couple of times, but that doesn't count. I'm a man, dang it. And while the ending is different from the book, given the context of the movie itself, it's an incredible payoff that manages to invoke hope in a hopeless world. It's a graphic yet powerful trek that is worth traveling. And that's why, when it comes to movies made in 2025, The Long Walk stands above all as my favorite and the best movie of 2025. So there you have it. Those are my list of the top 10 worst movies of 2025 and the top 10 best movies of 2025. And now that we have arrived to the year of 2026, I cannot wait to do this again with you guys. So until we meet again in Hollywood heaven, my name is Luke Nukem, and you, my friends, have been blown away.